Picking a successor trustee is probably one of the most important things that you will ever do if you own a trust. It seems to be simple. It's nothing that takes impact today, nothing that changes your life today. But believe me, it will change the future for you if you're still here and incapacitated, and certainly for your heirs and beneficiaries later on. Make sure that you understand what a successor trustee is and what it is that they do. Well, good morning and welcome to Consider This Program. I'm your host, Joe Clark.
And I'm Adam Harter.
Happy to have you all along. Hey, we are talking about something that continues to drive me. You know, I've been in the industry, Adam, for 33 years this year. And I'm only 54. I have no intentions of retiring, but it has been a long career. There's no way around it. And one of the things that really continues to drive me, as you know, is what happens to people when they're unable to take care of themselves. And, you know, we've taken care of some people, you know, you and I now, being here for more than 20 years, we've taken care of people for going into their third decade, 23, 24 years of life. And in my case, some that have been here 30 years. And it just seems unfathomable to me to walk away and not provide people insight and guidance when they get to a stage of their lives where they may not be able to make decisions on their own. And so I spend a lot of time talking about successor trustees. So Adam, why don't you put that in English? What in the world is a successor trustee?
Yeah, and this is easy to put on in English in simple terms because that's the only way I've been able to learn it. This is not necessarily my wheelhouse, but I've sure learned a lot from you over the years. So I can tell you that a successor trustee is important. It's who is going to succeed you, who is going to, right now, if you're asking that question, it's because you're in charge of your finances and making the decisions. So the problem here, the successor trustee is the person that's going to succeed you in making those financial decisions down the road.
So in your trust, whether you know it or not, you get to set the parameters, they're called powers, that we'll get to in a minute, but you get to set the parameters for how powerful that successor trustee actually is, right? This is like walking into a football game. Adam and I's favorite sport is probably golf, but he loves basketball. I like football a little bit more, but it is what it is. But in this sport, you get to come up with the rules. You get to define them. But once you have the rules, once the game starts, Adam, they can't be changed. Right. And that's the tough part, I think, for people to get. So you really have to be thinking about the long game as you go in. So when you're thinking about figuring out who that person is, who that successor trustee is going to be, what are some of the considerations that we should take that we should think about? Because what I see happen the majority of time when people have been to their attorney and they come in to see me, they've listed their two kids, right? So I got a brother, John. So Joe and John are now the trustees or the successor trustees. What do you think?
Yeah, so that's what we see most of the time. But I think you come back to the right questions to ask. Who should you look for? How are they going to follow those rules? Are they going to be in a position to follow them as you wish to have? And that's tough to do in that case when they're your children, because they're probably also the one that's going to be receiving the benefit from those funds. And so it's tough to be on both sides of that and to have your wishes made the best that they can.
And to keep there from being conflict between your brothers or your sisters or other parts of your family. And let's not kid ourselves, right? I've spent my entire life, literally, from the time I could figure out how to do this stuff, even before I could do it legally. I've been playing with money and markets and trying to figure out what's going on. I've never had another job. This is all I've ever done. My wife was a licensed teacher, right? She takes care of kids at one of the school system and fortunately for me runs my calendar now. But let's not kid ourselves. She may be named as the successor trustee in my in-laws trust, but who's really going to make the decisions? Right? I mean, it's going to, honey, what do you think? It's going to be one of those conversations. And that's what we see happen all the time.
Yeah, I'd say ideally it's somebody that knows they're going to have the job before they get it.
If they don't know, then you have a large chance, and in every trust document, there should be the ability for a successor trustee to resign or simply not accept, because things do change over time, right? Sometimes, you've got friends that are trustees that are no longer friends, or successor trustees, and, things just change in people's lives. So what are some of the other considerations that so it shouldn't be somebody, in our opinion, though I have a solution for that in a second. It shouldn't be somebody who's going to be a beneficiary. But what are some other things to consider?
Well, I would say familiarity with financial matters, or at least the things that they're going to have to control, because as you eloquently stated there, they're going to have some financial decisions to make, and you like them to have at least some ability. They don't have to decide what to buy or what to sell, but to at least be familiar with the language and accustomed to going to meeting with financial professionals or legal professionals, and somebody, and let's say, has the ability and the time to do it as well.
Right.
I mean, it could be a big job depending on what you have going on.
So I check that all under what I call competency, right? Because different people have different competencies. You do not. I talked to somebody earlier today, and I will jump to this and then we'll come back. But we have a program at the Financial Enhancement Group where we are financial fiduciaries and family friends. And what I mean by that, as I explained to the gentleman earlier today, the Financial Enhancement Group can be your successor trustee, but we do it in limited capacity. I do not want to deal with any of the life and health issues that go on. It should not be my job to determine whether or not to pull the plug, right? Shouldn't be my job to decide which long-term care facility that you're going to. And this is where you can actually name if you have 2 kids, you can name 2 kids as successor trustees for what we call, and in the trust document, is life and health issues. And then you're able to name the Financial Enhancement Group as the financial trustee, where we're responsible for all of the income deposits and the distributions and the management of all of the assets that are there, the stuff that we have competency in. The family friend comes in, whether I like it or not. I've now taken care of more than 2,500 families over 33 years. And, we got hit by COVID just like everybody else did. We lost 7 people in 64 days. And it really took its toll on me emotionally. I mean, no way to hide that in any way, shape, or form. You become attached to people. And you want to make sure that you've got something that is set up in a system that is able to function to help people get through some of these trying times. So if you have 2 kids and they're having an argument over a life or health issue, as opposed to going to court, which we have seen happen, believe it or not, you now have a family friend who can come in and cast the third vote to keep people out of court, to help make a decision based on the preponderance of the evidence and the examples that we've seen over the last 30 some years of our lives, right? Age is another one that I would put in considerations, but I really want to get to powers, because there's a Stick song, STYX, I think it was, a rock band. Adam would know this better than me. Yeah. The best of times, it was the worst of times, right? It's an old, I don't know if that's Shakespeare or who, but it crossed my mind the other day.
Tale of Two Cities.
Yeah. Yes. That's right. Best of times, the worst of times. So when you name a successor trustee, right? And again, when you form that trust document, with the help of good counsel, remember, I'm not an attorney, don't play one on TV nor radio. When you set that in force, you're going to give that successor trustee some powers to make decisions, right? Now, Adam, the more limited you make the decision, the more sure you are in your grave that your wishes are being dealt with,
Yes.
right? But there's a loss on that side. The loss is that things change. For instance, the Secure Act that passed at the end of 2019 totally changed the way that your retirement would work, eliminated the stretch IRA from the face of the earth in terms of how you can pass on your IRA and your 401k to the next generation. Just out of the blue, and they call it the secure retirement, just to kind of put the knife in and twist it a tad bit, right? My point being, the more limited the power, the more sure and more assurance you have that your wishes are carried out. On the other hand, the more power you give, the more that your trustee or successor trustee can deal with the changes to the tax code, to life, to COVID, whatever it happens to be. But they also have the ability to kind of stray a little bit from what your true intentions were, right?
Yeah.
So 1, make sure you know who your successor trustee is, and make sure that they're on the same page with you. There should be a lot of conversations. As Adam knows, I write letters to my trust all the time to just try to give them directions so that, something happens to me, they're able to show up and open up the envelope and go, okay, this is what the crazy guy was thinking this time, right?
Oh, certainly. And there's nothing you can do. That is a trade-off, flexibility versus certainty for having your wishes. There's nothing to really do away with that tension. It's going to be there, and each individual circumstance is going to guide you on how to meet that. But you're absolutely correct. Having those conversations in ahead of time, there's going to be gray area at some point somewhere. And the more you can add clarity in that why you're still alive, the better off and more likely that person is going to really know the what's behind those words that are in print.
Yep. So you'll hear people talk about special powers of appointment or powers. The one that's probably in your trust, if you already have it put together, is 4 simple letters. We call it HIMS. It stands for health, education, maintenance, or support. So like in my case, if something happened to Barb and I, my kids do not get any access to the capital, or what we call the corpus, the body of the trust, until they're over age 30. And then it's paid out over a period of time, so they have multiple years to be able to make mistakes, and things of that nature. It is very clear in most trusts that if they weren't 30, but they needed money for health, education, maintenance, and support, which are a little more cloudy than health and education, that the trustee or the successor trustee, becoming trustee, has the ability to make those distributions early and ahead of time. Now, if I want to, and I do choose to, give my trustees a little more power, I can define what that is. But this is where you want to be as specific as possible and as clear as possible, so that the court can't put in an arbitrary ruling if they read it to say, well, that's not what that says, right? You want to give your trustees some protection, to say, hey, as long as you're acting with the best of intent, not trying to harm, my wishes as the grantor, the person who put money in, or the beneficiaries, as long as you're acting with best intention, you've got no liability for the decision you make. I'm counting on you to use your heart and soul to make the same decisions I would if I were capable of making them myself. Right? So really think this through. If you've got a successor trustee, when I look at trust, the number one error, in my opinion, is people spend the majority of the time on talking about what happens when they're dead. And most of you will spend a much larger period of your life while you are incapacitated mentally or physically before you die. That is not hardly addressed at all in trust. And then the second one is it's almost like a godfather. I'm not from the Catholic faith, so I don't know what a godfather really is supposed to do. But it's a big deal, right? And so is a successor trustee. So if you can relate those two, think about how important that is. You've got somebody who's raising your kids. Now you've got somebody who's going to dispose of your assets for your kids. Give us a call, 800-928-4001, or go to yourlifeafterwork.com.